I'm Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens. Today I'm going to talk about an interesting pen that I just became aware of. This is called the Pilot Knight, K-N-I-G-H-T, like medieval knight. Actually, a few weeks ago, I was visiting the Institute Library in New Haven, and there's a wonderful person there who works there, Eva, and she showed me this pen that she said that she had, and she thought it was a Pilot Metropolitan, but it was actually this pen, the Pilot Knight, and I had never seen this pen. I knew it wasn't a Metropolitan, but I was sort of thought, oh, how could she have this pen? And she bought it, she said, in the last 10 years, and I just wasn't aware of it. So I went home and researched it, and I found out that it was made or was sold about 10 years ago in the United States. And I presume it wasn't too popular. It was it wasn't incredibly cheap, an expensive pen. I think it was supposed to list for around $40, and it was quickly discounted, and eventually they stopped selling it. So that was interesting. And then the other thing that happened is I got a package from my friend Phil, who I've interviewed on this channel and did his portrait. Tongji Philip Qian. I can never pronounce his name properly, which is, I think, why he goes by Phil in the United States. He's a wonderful artist, and he's doing a project in which he sends postcards from China and asks different American artists, I think American, all kinds of artists, to draw on the postcards or do something to the postcards, and then they're all going to be sent to China and be part of an exhibition. So I decided, since I was going to review this pen, that I would use it as that project. So at the end of this video, you will see that I would do a little watercolor on top of the card. So here we have the Pilot Knight next to two Pilot Metropolitans. This is sort of the black version. This is one of the first fountain pens that I got when I was sort of becoming obsessed again with fountain pens in maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And this is, for a lot of people, the Pilot Metropolitan is their first and only fountain pen, maybe. It's still a great buy, usually costs around $20 or so. And this is a kind of souped up version, I guess, or a pretty version of it that you can get. And there are so many different versions of the Pilot Metropolitan that you can get. And this is the pen that I saw at the Institute Library, and was immediately struck by how attractive it is, and it kind of step up from the Metropolitan. The nicest thing about this pen actually is the clip, because it's a spring action clip. If I can show you that, it's a little hard to show it on camera. And so that's nice. And it has a tendency to protect your pocket because it moves in this way. And then also it's on a diagonal, which is different from the very sort of more torpedo shape of the standard Metropolitan. And then you can see on the bottom that it also has this nice sort of insert and this brush silver. It's very simple. It says Japan and Pilot on it. And I think it's an attractive pen. It's not a wildly original looking pen. In fact, it looks like a lot of other pens. I immediately went back to the Lamy 2000, particularly the brushed stainless steel version of the Lamy 2000, which goes all the way back to the 1960s in terms of its design and how close this is. Another pen that comes to mind is, I believe it's called the Silvexa, I guess. It's just Pelican makes a pen that I think is very similar. And then I think also there is the Lamy Studio pen that is similar to this design. I think that particularly might be one of the things that they are thinking about. What makes the studio so cool, I think, is this sort of propeller shape of the clip, which is so nice looking, but actually is a bit tight, while the clip on the Knight pen is really much more comfortable. So this is a handsome pen. It's considerably heavier than the Pilot Metropolitan, but when you open it up, you see how close they are. You see how close they are too. Now, here is my one complaint, though, or major complaint about the design of the Knight, is that you see the section is much shorter than the section of the Metropolitan. And at least with my big hands, I find that this is so small that my fingers get stuck at the huge, very large step up that this design has. So the good news, I think, is that when you have a metal pen, there's a tendency for the section to be too slippery. And so having a plastic section with a metal pen isn't a bad thing, but having a section that's this small is a bad thing, I think. Now, like the Metropolitan, it posts very securely, so that's good. I like the weight of it. It's as I say, heavier than the Metropolitan, so it makes it more substantial. And the other thing about it is it has a nice click when it clicks, opens and closes. All that's very nice. The pen came with a converter, one of the old-fashioned kind of converters that has this sort of sack in it, and you push it. But I actually put in one of Pilot's 40 converters, which unfortunately doesn't hold a lot of ink, but works well. I think this converter actually holds a little bit more ink, but it's a little bit harder to clean. So I have a lot of these, so I just use this. And of course, it uses Pilot's proprietary cartridges, which I always find work really well. So all that is good, but the fact that the section is so short is not good. Nevertheless, I did use it to create a drawing of Amaryllis and colored it in that I did for Philip's project. Phil's project. Here he sent this little insert to sort of go over all the aspects of the show. He had about 100 postcards for the U.S. audience and a separate set for the Chinese counterpart, and he's doing this for the Yangdang Art Collective. So it's a kind of exchange of artists doing things together. Phil, I interview him on this channel. I did his portrait, and he talks a lot about his work, and his work, I think, does relate to a lot of conceptualists. He's very interested in the ways in which art is exhibited and its context. And I think this is typical of a Phil kind of show, which involves other artists, collaboration, but also kind of investigates the nature of something, which is not just the exhibit, but what are postcards and how do postcards work? Because actually we do something to the postcard, but we don't send it through the mail like a postcard. And so there's a kind of stopping and starting, beginning and ending that is going on in this particular project, and a kind of cross-cultural exchange that's going on in the project. And at the same time, there's a kind of weird mystery to it, like you're wondering, what is Phil really doing here? Why is he doing this? And you're never really quite sure. Anyway, I've really come to admire Phil, and it's really become one of my good friends. So I'm happy to do this with him and to use a fountain pen as part of that process. So how does this write? Well, that's the good news, because it writes really nicely. We're talking here about the Pilot, Knight. This is a medium nib, am using Pilot's Yama Budo ink, which is sort of purpley, and this is Rhodia paper. Now this is a medium, but it is very much a kind of Japanese medium. It doesn't have any line variation, but it's reasonably wet, and it's really very nice writer. I can see why people would like to write with it. It has a little bit of feedback, but it's pleasant. This is a very nice writer in terms of the nib, but the section is too short. So the section is too short, and I'm immediately not liking the fact that I have to put my fingers where the step up is, and that's very annoying. And then also, because it's a fairly heavy pen, it makes it even more annoying. So I can kind of see why this pen didn't really take off and was immediately discounted. And people who liked a pen like this just stuck with the Metropolitan, which after all is less expensive but not as nice looking. I wish they would redo this pen. I love the clip, but with a longer section. That would be a nice thing. Like all Pilot pens almost, it's very reliable writer, flows well. All those things are good. I suppose if I were to use it a lot, I would just hold it way up like this and not hold on to it and have to feel that step up. So there were several cards that we could choose, and this is the card I chose to decorate that Phil sent me. Basically, he said we could do anything in terms of response. I decided I'm just going to use the back, and the one thing is that we have to put a sticker onto this when we're done. That is kind of the address, even though this isn't going to go directly in the mail. Like a postcard would. We're going to send this back to Phil, and he's going to send them all to China for the exhibition. I decided to do a drawing of amaryllis because they are in full bloom in my house. And I'm going to use the Pilot Night pen to try it out for this purpose.